much for coming. I'm really excited to welcome you to the launch of the National Accessibility Plan. My name is Amy Lowe. I work here in Montreal at CBC News, and I do a community column there for the 6 o'clock newscast. So I'm going to do a short visual description. So I have dark brown, curly hair, it's tied back, kind of shaping my white face, and I have an orangey red blazer on with large buttons. So I'll throw to Gabriel.
Yep. Je m'appelle Gabriel Garon. Je suis
Gabriel Garon. I'm at Ontario. Very happy to be here as well this afternoon. I'm a white male, end of 20s, round glasses, a shirt, and a blue jacket. Today, it is a crucial moment today as public broadcaster to present the accessibility plan. So thank you very much for being with us today. We want to make the event as accessible as possible. We're very happy to have it in 4 languages: French, English, ASL, and QSL.
So the event is being live streamed, and on the screen to our left, we have the English version with ASL as well as English captioning. Et sur l'écran sur la droite,
on the right screen, we have the French version with QSL and French subtitles.
Online, I just invite you to choose the right link. There were 3 links. So one link has French LSQ and French captioning. One has English ASL and English captioning. And then the 3rd link is bilingual with no captions or sign language at all.
Et pour ceux qui sont présents dans la salle, sachez qu'il y a...
For those in the room, there's a sensitivity room here at the exit on your left. Before starting, to get quick of the subject, I would like to thank all those who are present here, employees, members of CBC Radio-Canada. Thank you to those who are joining us virtually. Your presence is a demonstration of support towards the cause, and it's very touching to see you all here today. And I also wish to take the time to note that the offices from CBC Radio-Canada are situated on our First Nations lands for
taking place on traditional Kanien'kehá:ka territory. And I want to acknowledge the contributions that Indigenous peoples share and offer in terms of ways forward in inclusivity. And I also want to invite us all to consider ways that we can further decolonization in our work and our personal lives. So today, I hope that we're not just launching our accessibility plan, but that we're also launching a way of working together that couples creativity and inclusivity, and that use these things as one and the same. I know in my role, there's work I can do in terms of making my content more accessible and learning and putting those things into practice. And I'm sure that there's that same opportunity for anyone and everyone in the roles that you do occupy. So I want to thank you for coming out to this launch, and let's give a round of applause for everyone who made this launch and the plan possible.
Et sans plus tarder, j'aimerais qu'on accueille...
Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Catherine Tate, our head, whose commitment towards inclusivity and that has opened the way to the launch of this event. Qui fait tout le bruit là?
J'espère que les micros sont bien forts.
I hope the microphones are very powerful.
Tout le monde, c'est un énorme plaisir.
It's a pleasure to be here to talk to you of accessibility. In this spirit, I would like to specify what I look like and how I am dressed. My hair is red and I'm wearing a white and blue jacket and blue glasses. We're underlying an important moment of we mark an important moment in the evolution of CBC Radio-Canada, the launch of our first National Accessibility Plan.
committed to accessibility, but today we are amplifying and strengthening this commitment like never before. Notre ambition est la...
Our ambition is to become a world leader in accessibility, both as an employer and as a broadcaster. And to achieve this ambition, we need the contribution of people with disabilities. Why is this important? Because 1 in 5 Canadians has a disability. These disabilities, whether visible or not, are experienced in a unique way by each individual. Serving everyone in the country can only be done if we reflect this diversity in our workforce and in our content. That's the goal behind programs like La Cour est pleine or the brand new podcast L'insolence du quotidien, launched today on audio, and many other stories we can't wait to share with you.
These are the driving force behind programs like CBC's Push and You're My Hero. We want to better represent people with disabilities across all our programming, entertainment, news, and sports. That's why I'm delighted that we recently renewed our partnership with the Canadian Paralympic Committee, and we will return as Canada's Paralympic Network for the Paris 2024 and Milano Cortina 2026 Paralympic Games to showcase how sport supports a more inclusive society. Accessibility is not only an inextricable part of equity, diversity, and inclusion, it's also essential to our mandate to serve the public. And to live up to this mandate and to better serve Canadians with disability, we have to transform our workplace culture. Just as we've made enormous progress since the launch of our EDI strategy back in 2021, this plan aims to identify, remove, and prevent barriers specific to people living with disabilities. We want to make CBC Radio-Canada the barrier-free public broadcaster that Canadians deserve. The National Accessibility Plan we're unveiling today was developed with the input of hundreds of people with disabilities across the country, and with the contributions of our colleagues with disabilities across the entire organization. Many of these colleagues were also part of the working group that led the project from day one. So thank you to everyone who worked so hard on this plan, including the members of the Accessibility Steering Committee and Disability Advisory Councils. I want to give a special shout out to Rachel Desjardins, our accessibility lead, who has masterfully led this process. Rachel, this is your baby, and you own it, girl. Really, it has been nothing but a pleasure to work with Rachel over the last months. En mars dernier, lors d'un événement...
Last March, at an accessibility event in Ottawa, our colleague, Kevin Breton, summed up the importance of giving people with disabilities a place at the decision-making table. He said, and I quote, "Give us the keys to the car." I love this metaphor because CBC Radio-Canada is the best vehicle for advancing the cause of accessibility in this country. And our accessibility plan is the key to getting the engine running. I'm not just talking about installing access ramps or adding subtitles to our programs. I'm also, and above all, talking about giving every Canadian the power to influence their own society by contributing to the best of their talents and abilities.
I'll hand things over to those who are going to make this plan a reality. Merci beaucoup. À vous deux.
Thank you.
It's great to hear your thoughts on this, and I'll invite Rachel Desjardins up on the stage. So for anyone who's had the pleasure of working with Rachel, we all know how passionate she is about accessibility and involving as many people as possible in this process. So I just want to thank you for all your work on this, and I'm going to invite you to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel DeJordi. I'm the accessibility lead at CBC Radio-Canada. I have very, very blonde hair, blue eyes, and I'm wearing a shocking pink dress today, and it's really a pleasure to talk to you about the National Accessibility Plan.
Merci beaucoup, Rachel. D'abord, moi,
Thank you very much, Rachel. First, I would like to congratulate you as well. We met a few times during public consultations throughout the country. So I saw the work, the dedicated work you've done over the last few months. Congratulations for all this. I want to talk of the raison d'être. Why are we launching a national accessibility plan? Excellent question. For me, over the last months, we had the opportunity to discuss with hundreds of people with disabilities throughout the country, and as members of people in creators, members of our employees, our personnel, and we got to know the obstacles that they live with on a daily basis. And to answer and to eliminate and prevent these issues, we need a roadmap. And this accessibility plan, which is a concrete action plan, and it's our map on how we will accomplish, how we will become a broadcaster who is a leader in accessibility.
Define a bit of the plan and tell us, a few of the key points.
Absolutely. So when you look at the accessibility plan, of course it talks about barriers and different categories of barriers, but there's three key ideas. And the first idea is we want to become a more accessible and inclusive employer. And with that, we have commitments, actions that we've taken. An example of that is we've committed to reviewing our accommodation practices to make sure that employees and managers have the tools they need to be more inclusive in the workplace. The second key theme is around reflecting disability in our stories and storytelling. An example of one of our commitments there is programs and opportunities to work with creatives with disabilities in the media industry, such as Access CBC, Synergy, that provide networking, production, other mentorship, development opportunities. And then the third piece is how can we champion accessibility in all that we do? And an example of the commitment we're making there is really providing a lot of training for our workforce, so that whether you're a journalist, whether you work in finance, whether you're a technician on a production set, you know exactly what it is that you can do to drive accessibility in your work.
Alors c'est un plan ambitieux, je pense qu'on peut le comprendre. Comment on va s'assurer d'atteindre les résultats?
So this is an ambitious plan. How do you expect to get to these results? So everything is in the process. So before today, we ensured that this is anchored in our reality. So we have built this plan in collaboration with colleagues in all the sectors of the organization. So information, communications, and what we have been able to achieve and understand is how to create a plan that reflects reality. Of course, this means that everybody jumps on board. And I encourage each of us to ask oneself the question, in my role, what can I do to make accessibility real? And so it's much about raising awareness and then to take up the different goals and targets that we've set.
Concrete steps, but also a shift in culture and understanding how we work together. So I want to thank you so much for bringing those points to our discussion today. And I want to share the website so that everyone can check out the accessibility plan. So It's strategies.cbcrc.ca/accessibility.
Merci beaucoup, Rachel. Avant de passer
So, thank you very much, Rachel. Before we move to the discussion with our panelists in a few minutes, we would like you to meet some of the people who were present at the public consultations throughout the country, and they share their vision with our broadcaster.
From people from the general public. And the idea behind it was write a love letter to CBC Radio-Canada.
Je m'appelle Alexandre Valera.
My name is Rita Painter.
Je m'appelle Monique Baudouin.
It's me, your love, Bianca Ngomo.
My name is Ralitza Rodriguez.
Mon nom est Pierre-Olivier Beaulac-Bouchard.
My name is Lina McGrino. Dear CBC Radio Canada.
I'm writing a love letter to you.
I love you because you are inclusive of Aboriginal people. Inclusion should include everyone.
J'aime mon diffuseur public et les projets qui y sont diffusés, mais je me demande si tu représentes bien toutes les communautés y vivant, dont la mienne, les personnes ayant un handicap.
I want people to see me as me. And I want you, CBC, to see more of me.
J'aimerais pouvoir écouter plus souvent la télé, mais elle n'est pas toujours adaptée pour moi, puisque l'information affichée à l'écran n'est pas annoncée verbalement. Je ne sais pas qui parle.
Because as a deaf person, you do not communicate with me.
Nobody should be left out. Nobody should experience any kind of barrier. There's so many beautiful stories being told, and I don't see a viable reason why there's anybody at all in this age of technology that shouldn't be able to enjoy that.
La présence de la LSQ à la télévision aide ma communauté à bâtir sa fierté en mettant de l'avant la langue des signes comme outil culturel et identitaire. Et il faut la faire fleurir, la LSQ, et la diffuser.
Representation matters, and it's all about normalizing certain things. Then it enables it to become just a normal part of society, which honestly it should have been in the first place.
The more exposure we have, the more we learn about each other, then the more we can help each other have better journalism.
Puis plus on va en voir, plus les gens aussi sont capables de passer à la télé, sont capables de faire des projets, sont capables de faire des activités. Toi, CBC Radio-Canada, je te souhaite une longue vie. Dans ton développement, l'accessibilité inclusive doit faire partie intégrante de tous tes projets et réalisations pour mieux incarner le Canada d'aujourd'hui et nous laisser une place que nous méritons.
On a notre place. On a notre place.
We both know that you can do better. So prove it to me that you can be a champion of inclusivity and accessibility.
It was really awesome seeing those diverse perspectives presented in that way. Very creative idea. So we've just welcomed our panelists on stage here.
Alors, pour réagir aux propos de notre public, on vient...
So, to respond to what our audience has to say, we'd like to invite you to take part in a discussion about accessibility and representation in CBC Radio-Canada content with some of our staff.
First, we have Gayatri Persaud, and she's the lead in Silly Paws. So this is a CBC Kids program, the first CBC Kids program that's in ASL. Gayatri, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Gayatri Persaud. I'm wearing a satin blue dress right now that has a feather trim on it. And you'll also see I have rhinestone shoes on. I do love to shine.
And joining us as well is Natasha Lipney. So she's a features producer for CBC Saskatchewan. Natasha, you've done a lot of work on accessibility in your region. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Yes, hello, I'm Natasha Lipney. Thank you so much for having me here. I am a white woman with long, wavy brown hair. Early 30s, though I like to say that sometimes I do look maybe late 20s, if I'm lucky. And I'm wearing a bright teal short sleeve dress.
Se joignent à la discussion également Kevin Breton, qui est journaliste au sport à Radio-Canada.
Joining the discussion, Kevin Breton, Radio-Canada sports journalist and host of Ça me regarde AM Télé. Hello, Kevin. Can you quickly describe yourself? Yes, I am a white gentleman in a wheelchair. I wear glasses. I have a beard, somewhat underdressed today in comparison to some of our other panelists. Well, that was a very honest description. Thank you. Jérôme Bergeron, first administrator of the National Accessibility Plan and journalist. Hello to you. Hello. Well, I'm at the end of my 20s. Will soon be in my 30s. I'm wearing a navy suit today as well as a flowery tie to remind us that summer is with us. Well, thank you very much, Jérôme, and thank you, all four of you, to be with us. So I'd like to start by addressing my first question to you, Kevin. We heard Miss Tate quote you at the beginning of the event with "give us the keys to the car." So when you see a plan like this one made public today, how do you react? Do you feel these keys are about to be handed to you? Well, thank you, Catherine, for quoting me. This is a good trademark. We could trademark "give me the keys to the car." This might be a nice title for a podcast. And what I mean by that is to give control to people with disability and to be able to be represented honestly with the broadcaster. And yesterday we welcomed Monica Hill, and she said, we used to speak of Indigenous people, and now we listen to Indigenous people. And I believe that people with disabilities are doing such work. And for quite some time, we've been interested in the narratives of the different people with disabilities. And actually, to this effect, go see Oscar-winning actors in Hollywood, and they often portray people that have disabilities. This said, it's not so obvious to see actors with disabilities, people who produce these wonderful movies and shows that actually have disabilities. So this brings me back to the idea of giving control to people with disabilities. There's an excellent series actually with Sean Tugwood called You're My Hero. This is a wonderful example of a project that was created and developed by a person with disability, and it's a project from the heart. It's a wonderful project. I'm currently working on RAR, La Loterie Génétique, which is a project calling upon people with disabilities. And this speaks of orphan diseases, rare diseases. And there's wonderful opening here at the CBC Radio-Canada. And I think it's going to be another wonderful project. And this is why we should be given the car keys. Well, I'm really looking forward to the show.
Authentic representation, not just stories about us, that really resonates. So I'm going to throw the next question to Gayatri. So like I mentioned, you play Simi in Silly Paws. And I wanted to ask your thoughts on why you think it's important for children to see their languages, their culture, their way of communicating presented on screen?
I absolutely love hearing that question. So first off, when I was growing up, as I was born, I was hearing. However, when I was quite young, I became deaf, and when it came to captions, that wasn't available when I was young, and I never saw myself on TV. So at a certain point, when I did decide to become an actor, the first show I was actually involved with was Blue's Clues, and that was the first time I got to have the chance to be involved with a production. And it was a hearing-hosted show with Steve, but I got to play the deaf librarian Camilla. And at that moment, it was one of those times where I had someone come up to me and say, finally, I get to see a brown woman signing who is deaf, who is a strong character. Seeing that moment, I realized how much of a role model I was becoming, and it was such an inspiring thing that people could see themselves here in the show with my performance. And I've also noticed that particularly here in Canada, we are lagging behind the States when it comes to access. As you mentioned, Silly Paws really is the first show of its kind, and it's been such an inspiring journey and growth to be able to see sign finally on stage or on the screen, so to speak, and not to have it be secondary to a hearing lead. To have your host, to have your lead character really saying, hey everyone, and communicating in their language. Whether it comes to deaf children and communicating with them directly, whether it comes to hearing children who are learning sign language, but also for parents who have deaf children, because they may be concerned at first, but they can see and realize that when it comes to deaf children, we have communication, we have language, we have an ability to really be able to stand on our own 2 feet. And so I'm really thankful to really be able to be that person that I wished I had in my youth for the deaf community.
Well, this is amazing, Gayatri. I think representativity is one of the key aspects of this plan, so it's amazing to hear your thoughts on this aspect. Thank you so much, Gayatri. Je vais me tourner vers Jérôme maintenant. Vous avez vous-même...
Now, let me now turn to Jérôme. You have been behind these many public consultations throughout the last few months to meet Canadians across the nation. So what do you keep from them?
Handicap, on est allé vraiment partout.
Everywhere in the country, we're east to west, going from the north, Yellowknife, Toronto, Sudbury, Montreal. We went in the east as well, on the Halifax side, and so we consulted Canadians but also employees with disabilities. And what I really got out of these consultations with our audience was to what point it's important for them to better see themselves on screen. It's interesting as well with these consultations that we met people with a wide variety of disabilities. Disability is not just a typical, stereotypical person. We can say it here today. We're presenting people on the panel. We're all different. And there's truly a large variety of disabilities. And what struck me was to properly represent this diversity. And according to Statistics Canada, 25% of the population, or 22% of the population are living with a disability. It's enormous. That's 10 million people. So we can understand now why these people, and I say they, I should include myself as a person with disability, we want to be seen more, see ourselves in the content offered by a public broadcaster. One thing that struck me in Regina, we met a man who is about to retire, who's deaf, and he said, I wish only one thing, that kids with disabilities, deaf children, may see themselves on the screen and allow themselves to dream, because when a child dreams, there is nothing better for society than let this child dream and participate in advancing society. So that's what marked me. And it's an emotional subject as well. It gets people, and I'm happy to see too that we are launching this plan. And I have the impression that once we've worked to develop this plan, or while we were working on this plan, Rachel and myself, we kept this idea in the back of our head. Each time we were writing this report, this plan, we were going to talk to people, different parts of the company. So we're bringing the opinion of these 900 people that we've met over these last few months, be it online or in a survey, online survey or in person. We've kept these people present because they took time to come and meet with us. And I think it's important to remember that when it was time to develop the strategy. Thank you very much, Jérôme. I think it's important as well to remember that it's a national plan on accessibility that was created by and for Canadians so that we feel represented. So thank you very much.
There's so many different experiences that go into our storytelling and our work here. And so I wanted to ask you, Natasha, you've been involved with a stakeholder meeting in your area in Regina. So can you tell us a little bit about what that brought for you?
Sure, thanks for the question. So about 2 years before you were traveling across the country, Jérôme, we did something similar on a much smaller scale at CBC Saskatchewan. In the middle of the pandemic, we invited people from across the province, from a variety of backgrounds and experiences, to a virtual stakeholder meeting. And the idea was similar to what you and Rachel undertook. It's simple. We need to hear from people. We need to hear what their experiences are, and more importantly, what their experiences are interacting with CBC or maybe avoiding CBC, and what they want to see from their public broadcaster. It was a simple format, but very, very effective. A few of our staff members were involved from a variety of roles, and we just opened the floor for about an hour and a half. Those minutes from those meetings were then shared across both of our newsrooms in Regina and Saskatoon. And I think it's safe to say they've had a lasting impact, and we see to this day, 2 years later, that people are considering that feedback in how they approach their journalism and their programming, how we decide on stories, who we're including in the stories. Are we considering a disability lens or angle that we may have missed before? Are we including people with disabilities in stories that are not about disabilities at all, which is something we repeatedly hear that's crucial? And how we can better connect with creators with disabilities and engage them as well, get pitches from them, et cetera. And we continue to connect with these stakeholders. I emailed them about this morning, certainly, and seek feedback from them on certain projects. So there's that continued feedback loop with that group.
I mean, it's nice to hear that it was a simple format, that it didn't have to be a huge heavy lift to go and meet people and ask their thoughts on our programming. And you know, hearing about the ongoing kind of relationship that you built, that's really positive as well, I think, in terms of just like, you know, learning as we go. So I'm gonna throw it now to Gayatri again, and this is something that you hinted at earlier. So you've performed in Canada and also abroad. So tell us a bit about what you think we need to do here in Canada to, I guess, compare, measure up, or just generally, approach what other countries are doing in terms of accessibility.
Absolutely. So I have also worked in America a number of times, and as I mentioned, they are far ahead of us. We here in Canada are lagging behind when it comes to accessibility. And there's a lot of issues that do come up with that. When it comes to that, focusing on priorities, when we think of accessibility, something that they have in America and they've already understood is that we don't just have an interpreter, we have a deaf performer. There comes to an idea also of having the right amount of cast members in for this. So when it comes to someone who's performing, they also need to be able to have the ASL coach. And so when it comes to our rights as a disability performer, or as a disabled performer or as a deaf performer, there are a number of things that do come up, and people, when they focus on accessibility, they might just kind of think on the baseline of, oh, an interpreter means accessibility, but they don't think about what it comes to the needs and the story and what actually truly makes it accessible on stage or on screen. And it's sad because we're also seeing a number of deaf schools that are closing here in Canada, and folks are then being transferred into mainstream schools where they don't have access to ASL, which is their first and natural language. So similarly, as for those of you who are French speakers here, can you imagine being deprived of that language when you're put into a school system that you're being told is better education, and you almost end up brainwashed to think that ASL is not as important a language when it truly is our voice as deaf Canadians.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, you raised the important point that, you know, this is a culture. It's not just an accommodation. It's really a language, a culture, a way of communicating. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Gaytree.
Thank you very much, Gaytree. I'll turn to Jérôme again. Once again, on our content, how can we make our content more accessible at CBC Radio-Canada? Well, it's certain as a public broadcaster of a responsibility to ensure that content is more accessible. What I would like to remind people of is the accessibility is useful for everybody and not just for people with disabilities. I have statistics here. We can go to subtitling, for example, that we offer 24 hours a day on TV. We know that on the English-speaking audience, there's 23% that turn on subtitling, whereas depending different researchers, 10 to 20% of Canadian population that have a loss of hearing. So it allows us. It's not useful just for people who are deaf, but it can help also those who have problems understanding. And it's important to always keep that in mind, that accessibility is not just for one person, it's truly for all of society. So why not make sure that this subtitling that's offered on TV be also available on online content, on social networks? That is where there is a lack. We see that some of our content on the web is not subtitled. There are great initiatives as well on transcription. So today we launched L'Insolence du Quotidien, which is available with transcripts. It won't only help those people who have a problem hearing or are deaf, but what we have to remember is that audio description is so useful when we listen to TV or when we watch TV. What I apply sometimes, you describe what you see. It makes for good TV. You can see behind me, the fire is lit. We can see the flames coming out of the window. So it allows people who don't see well or in a vision issues that they can understand what's going on. It's useful for those people, but it's also useful for Jérôme, who's prepping his meal in the kitchen, and the TV's in the living room. So having this audio description allows people to properly understand what's going on, and also to describe what we can see on cards or tables or anything on TV. So it's a slight thing that we can easily add. We just have to review our work method, because we do things out of habit, and that makes things much more accessible. Our websites, we have to always improve them. We have to ensure that we respect standards in terms of accessibility, but we can feel that we're always in the right direction. We've got teams that are motivated to do that. That's what remains to be done over the next few years. So I think you quite well expressed it. Make our content accessible doesn't only mean making it accessible for a few people with disabilities, but to make our content accessible for everybody. So thank you very much for your point of view, Jérôme.
Chopping your vegetables, it's true. That's how we take media in, right? We're not just always right in front of the screen. So thanks. So we're going to share another video now, and this one highlights the perspectives of people from within our own organization. So here, employees with disabilities share some of their thoughts about working here at CBC Radio-Canada.
Ouais, ce sont des employés en situation de handicap à CBC.
So these are employees who are with disabilities who work here at CBC Radio-Canada, who are sharing the progress that's accomplished, but also the challenges that still exist in the organization, and also those advances that have been brought by CBC Radio-Canada. We've all asked them to write us a letter.
Cher CBC Radio-Canada, je m'appelle Boris Tia et je suis premier conseiller en veille stratégique concurrentielle. Je me suis senti considéré, valorisé et écouté lorsque tu m'as impliqué et consulté dans l'élaboration de notre premier plan national sur l'accessibilité.
My name is Ashley Brady, and I'm a United technician at CBC Toronto, and I use a coffee implant processor to help me receive sounds and speech. My colleagues and I have developed a subtitle system to assist me in using the intercom, which is something I have never had before when I was freelancing outside of CBC.
Ici Jérémy Bergeron, journaliste pour le réseau de l'information, le RDI, à Toronto.
Avec ma surdité modérée à sévère, on m'a souvent dit que je ne pourrais pas pratiquer ce métier, que mon accent, que plusieurs ont qualifié d'accent de sourd, ne pourrait pas passer à l'antenne. Mais c'est aussi ça, CBC Radio-Canada. Embrasser la diversité. Représenter le pays dans toute sa richesse, même dans la différence des accents.
It's me, Jason Boychuk, Senior Developer, Digital Development for CBC Sports. ERGs like the Abilo crew have changed things for the better by raising awareness of disability issues in the workplace. We've helped shift attitudes to be more considerate of others in the workplace with disabilities.
Je suis Véronique Tessier. Je suis aiguillère et réalisatrice au Téléjournal. C'était mon rêve de venir travailler avec toi. Toute petite, on m'a dit que je ne pourrais pas, car il fallait bien parler, bien écrire et surtout communiquer dans un langage impeccable. À la fin de ma première semaine de stage, un collègue est venu me voir en me disant « Tu es dyslexique, hein? » Puis il a ri et il dit « Ben comme moi! » Enfin, je pouvais me dire « Il y a quelqu'un comme moi! » Puis en plus, c'est pas n'importe qui, c'est Charles Tisser!
Les gens talentueux qui ont un handicap, quel qu'il soit, devraient avoir leur place à Radio-Canada. Les gens qui ont un handicap ne sont pas moins créatifs que les autres, pas du tout, que ceux qui n'en ont pas.
My name is Issa Kixon. I am an associate producer and I work in current affairs in Winnipeg, Manitoba. The one thing that I really love about working with CBC, whether it's a chronic illness, a disability, mental illness, if you're going through something, they want to provide the best way to help you work.
If I could wave a magic wand anywhere, any workplace in the world, where someone could feel free to be comfortable in disclosing their disability before the interview.
You can work with people with disabilities rather than working around people with disabilities. I'm here.
Ça n'a pas toujours été facile. Parfois, on doit faire face à de l'intolérance, à de l'ignorance aussi. Il va aussi falloir toujours poursuivre des efforts de sensibilisation pour continuer de travailler dans un environnement de travail inclusif.
I would love to see if CBC can support other people who have disabilities, pay attention to what they need.
J'ai eu l'agréable surprise lorsque je me suis joint à CBC Radio-Canada de constater à quel point il y avait des gens qui étaient comme moi. Et ça a contribué à me sentir plus inclus encore. Ouais.
Pour en savoir plus à propos de notre plan sur l'accessibilité, visitez le stratégie.cbcrc. Accessibilité.
To learn more about our
So before moving on, I would like to thank the employees that we saw in the video. Thank you so much for sharing these testimonies. It was wonderful to hear you. Thank you. And in the video, you've heard our colleague Jason speak of a support group for employees with disabilities at the level of the CBC. And we're very happy today to say that we have a similar group is created in French language. So for those of you who would like to be involved, you can write to the address capaccessibility@radiocanada.ca. Now let us pursue the discussion. Now we've spoken of representation, but what about working at the CBC Radio-Canada? So I'll start with you, Kevin. Among the comments we received during the consultations across the nation, several people have said, I didn't even know I could get a job at CBC Radio-Canada. So what's your response? Well, this is back to what we were saying earlier, the power of representation. You've all mentioned this. Now, I understand these people because when I was younger, I did not see sports journalists with disabilities. I didn't see people with disabilities in the media, generally speaking. So I understand these comments. Furthermore, it hasn't been so long that people with disabilities have been on the job market, so to speak, with access to education and getting certificates to be able to get loans to study and also to get jobs such as at the CBC. So it's quite recent. Now, this said, the doors of educational institutions are much wider open towards people with disabilities, and there's also greater openness on the part of the various media to hire people with disabilities as we see some of the different role models, people with disabilities accessing interesting positions. And at the CBC Radio-Canada, we've noticed, actually, maybe we're a bit of a leader in the field where we've seen that, maybe we're missing something here. So it's a great pleasure for me as somebody with disabilities to bring a different perspective in the sports room. I believe my perspectives are a little bit different and benefit all of my team. And so I would say that CBC Radio-Canada has been moving forward.
Maybe it's a small observation about the shoot or something like that, but it really can advance the work that we're all doing. So, yeah, Natasha, tell us a bit about how you learned some of your inclusive journalism practices. Like, I know you went to journalism school. Was it there that you picked those approaches up, or how did it come about?
So I wish it was in journalism school. I was there a few years ago now, but I hope that this content is being added or will be added soon to journalism programs. That wasn't the case for me. So a lot of this has been learning on the fly, has been doing my own research as a producer to bring these elements to projects. I'm thankful that we have a couple excellent groups at CBC that I've been able to consult with for tips on accessibility, features for stories, as well as how to approach our reporting. But I think more importantly than anything else, it comes back to that consultation. I mentioned that stakeholder group earlier. So regularly when I'm working on a project, I will turn back to those stakeholders or simply ask the people who you're interviewing, what can we do to make us working on this story together? That's key. This is with them, not about them. Working on this story together, the best experience possible for you. And when we present this story, how does it need to be presented so that you, your family, your community can consume this story in the most accessible way and share it? Because if we're missing that audience, what's the point of what we're doing here? We don't get everything right. We've made mistakes. Sometimes we miss things that afterwards we're like, that should have been obvious. But every single time we're learning. So if you're working with CBC or you're another journalist who's watching this and this seems very, very daunting, take it step by step. People are willing to have these conversations if they see that you're making the effort, and it is so worth the effort, and it will build and build over time.
Je veux qu'on rebondisse là-dessus avec Jérôme de votre œil.
So, Jérôme, I would now like to ask you as a journalist, when you think of the youth, when you think of the future of journalism and those who would like to work at the CBC Radio-Canada and who meet with accessibility challenges, do you think we're in a better position today and that we are eliminating them? Well, I've certainly seen the organization evolve. There are far less challenges now than there were when I first began working here, and the obstacles, I would add, are really not intentional. Some of them are directly linked to technology. For example, I need hearing aids, and when I'm on the field, well, sometimes it's not always easy to hear the host or the production team, and there are delays or telex, and essentially, technologically speaking, I was not able to understand 100% the messages that I was receiving. It's not that we didn't want to find solutions, but there were no solutions back then, 10 years ago. But since then, becoming aware of the issue, we've been able to adjust the technology so that I may hear as I should when I'm on the field. And this really made a difference for me as a journalist, and when I was also conducting interviews, it added ease to the whole unfolding of the interview because I could hear instructions from my team and so on much better than I could before. So what I would say to youth, keep believing in your dreams. We need you. We need a diversity of voices, and we need different perspectives with respect to the news. So welcome, move forward, and surround yourself with champions. And thanks to a champion actually at the CBC in the newsroom, that I was able to raise questions with regards to these technological challenges that I was just describing, and we were able to find solutions. And so there is room to meet the challenges. And this is true for all the teams throughout the organization, for people behind the cameras as well. And I believe that we are increasingly making room for everybody as time unfolds. Well, wonderful. What I understand is that we understand, raise awareness, and find solutions.
I'm sure you have all the info you need to best report, right? Makes me think of the little microphone stand that some colleagues built for my wheelchair. It's such a simple design, but before that we were worried, how am I going to best mic myself so I'm actually heard on the news, you know? And it was just an afternoon we spent in the workshop building this thing, and now it comes with me on all my shoots, and it's really helpful. So, you know, it's just like you said, that la volonté, the willingness to figure out these little design hacks. So listen, it's been amazing taking in all your points of view. I would love to just continue talking, brainstorming this whole day, but we do have another video that we're going to show shortly. But first, I just want to thank our interpreter here, who's been working nonstop behind this screen to my right for the entire event so far. So thank you so much.
Alors,
Okay, well, as Amy was saying, we are coming to the conclusion of this launch, but we have a video to present to you. And this is with Michelle Bissonnette, our Vice President at Radio-Canada, and Barb Williams of CBC.
To share their points of view about accessibility and why it's important to them as leadership.
It's such a pleasure to be here and be a part of this important launch at CBC Radio-Canada. You know, for CBC, it's important we're a leader in this space. We are committed to equity and inclusion, and accessibility is such a critical piece of that. And all of that work that we do, it is central to every decision we make every day at CBC. It's not something extra, it's not something we add on later. It's at the heart of everything we do and everything we are. So what does that really mean for us at the CBC? Well, it means inside we need to be sure that our buildings are accessible to all. We need to be sure that we're making accommodations where they are required. We need to be sure that our digital products, our websites, our tools can be used by everyone. And what does it mean for our audiences? Well, it means that our shows need to have characters in them that have disabilities. It needs to mean that our shows reflect everyone who lives in Canada, and that we're an inclusive storyteller here, and that includes people with disabilities. I'm sure that's the same for you, Michelle.
Oui, je pense que quand on lance un plan comme celui-là, la première étape, c'est assurément une prise de conscience, puis une prise de conscience qui doit être collective pour l'ensemble des employés. Et après, c'est une question de posture dans laquelle on se met. Donc, à chaque fois qu'on crée des contenus, comment on s'assure de rendre nos contenus accessibles au plus grand nombre de personnes? Il ne faut pas sous-estimer l'importance également de retrouver des personnes en situation de handicap dans nos séries de fiction, que les histoires puissent relater la réalité, le quotidien. Et plus les gens en situation de handicap vont être présents dans nos contenus, plus on va confirmer notre pertinence comme diffuseur public. Quand on organise des activités, que ce soit à l'interne ou à l'externe, comment on s'assure que tous peuvent y participer? Et assurément, quand il y a des personnes en situation de handicap dans l'organisation, qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire pour qu'ils puissent se développer à leur plein potentiel? Soyez sensibles, on a besoin de tous les talents à Radio-Canada et à CBC.
Alors, c'est déjà la...
And so we come to the end of the launch of our accessibility plan. We would like to express our sincere gratitude to everyone who contributed to the success of today's event. Thank you to our incredible panelists. We really need to give them a round of applause. And we would like to extend our warmest thanks to the members of our senior management who I see here today. Thank you for your leadership, your dedication to accessibility and inclusiveness. And it's great to see you here. Our recognition as well to the Accessibility Steering Committee, the English and French Advisory Councils for People with Disabilities, and other staff members who have played an essential role in the design and implementation of this comprehensive accessibility plan. Your commitment to creating a more accessible future for CBC Radio-Canada is simply exemplary. So thank you very much for having contributed to it.
As well. It's been an awesome opportunity to exchange with you. I hope that we get to continue the conversation too. I know we'll all have tricks and things to share with each other, so I look forward to that. And I want to thank people who started the first ERG here at CBC, Abilacru, because they're like the big siblings of a lot of us, including me. So yeah. A big thank you to everyone behind the scenes, comms teams, technical people, managing the cameras. Thank you so much for all your work on this event today. So let's give us all a round of applause and say, let's make our public broadcaster the most accessible ever. Woo-hoo.